And so when Sam joined the band, things started getting heating up for them in the sort of wider industry, touring and label interest. And I just naturally fell into the role of also doing management tasks. We never really gave it a name. I just started doing more stuff for them.
So did they not have a manager at that point?
They had worked with someone in a sort of loose sense,
right?
But they didn't feel like they had anything like especially proper.
Yeah.
And they just asked me to increasingly do more stuff. Their agent at the time was Ross, who I had a relationship with, obviously through my own band.
Yeah.
So he and I had a rapport, and it just kind of naturally, I don't know, just sort of ended up happening. And it wasn't until Sam, actually, as a new member of the band, introduced me to someone as their manager that I was like, I guess that is what I'm doing. So yeah, it's kind of convoluted, weird little path, but that's how I kind of got from band member to being an artist manager. It's kind of all a bit happenstance and all a bit kind of like an opportunity here has presented itself. I was kind of follow that, take the opportunity, follow the path, see where it leads. And yeah, I was fortunate that, really very fortunate that Architects were such a great band, and that they were able to, that we had this kind of relationship that I was able to that we were able to work together like that.
That's awesome, man. I mean, there's so many people that where we sit down and we talk, it sort of sounds like they got lucky because the first band they dealt with blew up.
Yeah.
But also it's obviously not luck because there's like 100 other people around that band that didn't take those opportunities. So you really see that the people that are actually like, they find their first band, but they've actually worked their ass off for like years.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was really hard work. I worked really hard for them. And I think that one of the reasons it worked so well is because we connected as people.
Yeah.
We had similar musical sort of interests and sort of were in agreement on what the sort of scope of Architects was. A lot of people listen to Nightmares especially and considered them to be this kind of mini Dillinger. But I felt that I could already hear this kind of like bigger band inside it.
So as they grew then, did you have to leave your job doing PR?
Yes, yeah. I left my job doing PR in 2007 to go with Architects full time. Basically, it was not long after Sam joined, and it started becoming like a more legit enterprise. I wanted to devote more of my time to it, and so I quit my job in London and started just working for Architects essentially full time. Like, I would almost call it like I was like their assistant. I was like Architects' personal assistant. I went on tour with them and I helped sell merch and helped advance shows. I did like elements of tour management work. I wouldn't say I was ever like, when I see some of the amazing tour managers that are out there right now, I'm like, I was not doing that job, but I was doing like a version of it for Architects level back then.
Yeah. And
so I was kind of just with the band doing bigger picture stuff, but also doing day-to-day stuff and just kind of what did the project need? What did the band need? And so we did that for like a couple of years together.
How much influence did you have? Did they just come to you and say, this is what's happening, help us? Or did you sit down and you come up with the sort of strategies with them?
Yeah, we came up with it together. We were in a social circle heavily at the time. We were really just part of the same group of friends as well. Like those guys would hang out at my house. Myself and Tom and Dan used to watch 24 together all the time, and we watched Lost together all the time. Like we were just like a friendship group. And so the sort of business and friendship side of it was very interwoven. We were just always sort of talking about the band. And so it's kind of hard to say really back then. Obviously they handled all the music is all them, but I think I had some influence in kind of like what the aesthetics of the records were like what the artwork looked like, track listing, stuff like that. I remember Tom playing me a demo of the song Hollow Crown, Early Doors, and being like, is this too bold to put on the record, do you think? And so I was often like, I guess a somewhat objective opinion for them to sort of bounce stuff off. And certainly back then we were all very in tune with each other musically, and I think I feel like they trusted my understanding of what they were trying to do, and so we bounced off each other a lot. And then when it came to being signed to Century Media and stuff like that, I took care of all the business interests, so I represented what they wanted to do to the label and became the kind of funnel between the agent and them. And
what was that like when you were doing that then? If that was sort of a lot of those things for the first time, did you feel like you're in over your head, or was it just
yeah, definitely. Like I said, I was learning on the job, and so there were definitely things that would come up, like, you know, withholding tax in Europe. You know, I would have no clue over that, and it was like, oh right, I should have done X amount of paperwork, right, noted. You know, and I don't think there were any like colossal mistakes that led to like, you know, oh my gosh, we have lost thousands of dollars because of pounds because of X, Y, Z. But there were definitely times where I was like, right, should have definitely known that. And I think, you know, me now would not have gone as lightly on like deal negotiations as I did back then. Back then we were all very excited about a label being interested, about Century Media being interested. And I think that there was a naivety, certainly, that I had back then, being more inexperienced, that led to me not pushing too hard on like a deal negotiation, for example. So maybe the Century Media deal, very, very likely the Century Media deal they signed back then is probably not the best deal. And had I been a bit more versed in things, or a lot more versed in things, I could have, you know, but that's all hindsight stuff.
Yeah, of course, man.
It was fine to us at the time.
Like at the time, was that a case of like, I don't want to push my luck and lose the deal?
Yeah, basically, yes. And not having kind of the experience to know that like all these sorts of deals are negotiations. Yeah. And that most offers are lowball positions, and you go in highball and you go blah, 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 until you get to sort of the middle ground where everybody's happy. And that you can trust more in, you know, lawyers and the fine print and all these kind of things. There was a lot of excitement. It was quite easy to get swept away when it's your first time, like, oh my gosh, I bought records that are on Century Media, how exciting, you know. And so that sort of naivety and first time excitement definitely plays into it.
Were the bands part of those meetings with you, or did you go in on your own?
That would have been me on my own for the most part. They definitely met with the label. I remember some meetings with the label, like early days when they were kind of courting. But the negotiations were myself, a lawyer, and myself and a lawyer, and then going back to Century Media and then taking their response or what have you. But yeah, those things were certainly not as thorough as they should have been. But you know, the band's still standing right now, and it's like a very big band, so we didn't do anything.
It's definitely
that was too damaging for the longevity. So
when and why did you stop working with them?
We parted ways because they had an opportunity to move to 5B on a worldwide management contract. So when 5B initially approached the band, summer, I think it was 2008, it was the summer after Hollow Crown came out, and the band was like really leveling up. So Hollow Crown was really a big level up for them, and a lot of the things they were doing, but off the back of that record, like they headlined a sold out Islington Academy, they had like a really amazing set at Download Festival that year, all this kind of stuff. Like the band was going up a notch. And we were starting to hit the US as well, although the first Architects US tour was somewhat of a disaster, but they were starting to gain traction.
Why was it a disaster?
Just lost a lot of money.
Okay.
It was the wrong package, ultimately. We accepted a tour that was supposed to have Dillinger on it, and then Dillinger ended up not doing it, and Architects ended up being a bit of a fish out of water on a deathcore tour.
Okay.
And it was just not the right thing. It just ended up not really working out on all fronts. Completed it, survived it, but nevertheless, the band was starting to gain traction everywhere, and 5B got in touch and were interested in speaking to the band for management. And because the band and I had a close relationship, we'd been together years at this point, they forwarded that to me to like look into. And so I spoke with Joey, who was at 5B at the time. He's still their manager, architects manager to this day. Right. But I spoke to him, and he's at Madden now, but he was at 5B back then. And I spoke with him, and we sort of figured out that, I mean, I was the first to put my hand up and say we definitely need support in America. Like this, the touring so far has not been the greatest, and we could really do with that sort of leg up. And so I saw it as an opportunity for the band for sure, but at the time I thought it was one that could perhaps include me also
moving to 5B with them.
Yeah, right. So that was kind of the hope. And so I helped negotiate like a co-management agreement where 5B would work the band in North America, and I would look after them everywhere else, and we would kind of do it in coordination.
I mean, sorry, just to give people context, 5B have bands like Slipknot,
yes,
Baby Metal, Motionless in White. Like they're a huge management company globally.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and when I first saw the 5B offices in New York, it had like mixed guitar hanging on the wall, and Slipknot gold records everywhere, and this kind of stuff. Like really, amazing agency.
Yeah.
Who have worked with Trivium as well, like some of the biggest.
I went to the offices in LA, and it was the first time I'd been into like a metal office, and was like, holy shit, like
this is how big this genre can get.
Yeah. Like everything else I'd seen is like you're in a small room in the big place, or it's just a small room. Mm-hmm. Like theirs was like, that was the big place.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like amazing opportunity for them, and I was not going to let any ego or like sense of entitlement or anything like that block the band's progress. I just felt at the time, whether that's naive or not, I felt at the time that this sort of expansion could include me.
Yeah.
And so we negotiated this deal, and that only stayed in place for a very short time, and very quickly the band made the decision to go with 5B worldwide, which truthfully, I as much as it was painful at the time, I completely understand why they made that decision. They were my first management client.
Yeah. Did you fall out over it, or?
I wouldn't say we fell out, but we didn't talk for a little while.
Yeah.
And there was some repair that needed to be done from both sides. I obviously was hurt by it, and there was just a few things that went down in the kind of breakup of it all. It's like any relationship breakup, really.
Yeah,
it is a breakup, especially after that amount of time and how interwoven our lives were.
How long had you been with them at that point?
4.5 years. But not only had we been working together, but we had been on tour together. We were in the same social groups, They'd stayed at my house, I'd stayed at their house. Like we were properly like, it wasn't just like I'm the suit that does the business affairs. Like we were properly interwoven. And so there was more fallout from it than just like, I don't work with architects anymore.
Yeah.
And so, for a time I was having to sort of figure out when they weren't going to be at places, like shared spaces.
Yeah.
So that I could go and hang out with certain people and stuff like that. So certain things needed to be rebuilt. But they did. It took about a year for things to rebuild. But then, by the time The Here and Now came out, which was like the next record, we were mates again. And we've stayed friends ever since.
I guess it's like easy to see why you'd fall out, but easy on both sides to see why the other person would be upset and
Absolutely.
Why the move was probably very necessary for them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think they should have made that move. They made the absolute right move for their career. And truthfully, I think that for myself in my own career progression, it was the best thing that could have happened to me also. Like, not saying I wish for that kind of level of disappointment or what have you, but I learned a lot from that. From that being my first band, I kind of got a very all-inclusive experience in the sense of you know, they were my first client. I got to experience this like rise, but then I also got to experience like a loss. And a lot of the ways that the band and I parted ways have been instructive for me in my career since. Like, I've always since sought to try and protect myself and try and insulate myself and be part of an agency, not sort of like a lone person that can be that have the band poached off them. I mean, I don't think that 5B poached it. I'm not saying that at all, but like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I know what you're saying.
I very consentingly did the deal with 5B, so that it was not in any way like a poaching. But losing an artist like that and being vulnerable like that when it's like a big agency versus me by myself, that's the thing I wanted to kind of avoid in future. And I think it was just a good learning for me to kind of to feel like rejected, and then over time, as those things healed, as the rawness of it healed, to be able to reflect on, well, why would they want that, right? What am I not offering? Where are my shortfalls? And it made me consider, like, do I actually really want to do this as a job, right? Because being architect's manager was, as I've explained, like a bit of happenstance, a bit of an accident. And I think I did a good job of setting them up and being an integral part of the kind of early years foundation.
Did you feel like you'd lost a bit of your like identity? If you'd spent 4 years being like the guy with architects at the festivals and at the shows, and like, what are you now without it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was once in an argument with a professional argument with someone who I'm not going to name, but another person in the business who, in a moment of spite, said that I was known as the guy who lost architects. And that was a real stinger for me. I was like, really, is that what's defining me? And I don't think that's necessarily was true.
Was this early on after that you'd lost?
It was not long after.
Right.
Yeah. It was a spiteful exchange, shall we say. But that always stuck with me as well. I was like, I don't want kind of shortcomings and losses, you know. 4 years with the band, and I should be known for like the positive contributions, not the fact I lost the band or what have you. And so there was definitely a lot of things to reflect upon, and I had lost a sense of identity from it, and it made me feel, because I went straight from my band into kind of doing this, like I was almost processing like, who am I without my band? Who am I without architects? Like, I was able to sort of seamlessly merge these two things. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, now I'm just sort of me and have to sort of figure out, what do I actually want to do? Do I still want to do this job? And if so, how do I want to do it? And what can I learn from where I went wrong with architects, or like moments where I made bad decisions or didn't have the right amount of information or the right amount of backing or infrastructure or what have you. And so it ended up being a very important piece of learning for me. And, you know, look at the band, they're still with Joey and they've flourished. And I'm very happy for them. You know, I'm super stoked. They're my friends, and it's great to see them to have gone on to achieve the things that they've achieved. Like, I feel vindicated. I feel like I saw more than a band that sounds like Dillinger Escape Plan. I saw a bigger band living inside of that, and I helped in those early years to nurture that and to sort of augment it and try and bring it out of itself. And the band that stands there today, I think, is, you know, somewhat that band that I recognised. So I'm proud of that. I still feel a sense of pride in what they've gone on to achieve.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, I guess it makes it a little bit easier knowing that if they had to part ways, it was for something that was worthwhile, and it didn't just like collapse and you're like, oh, look, you fucking idiots, you fucked it up. Like,
right, exactly.
Seeing that actually everything worked out is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they're an important, I believed back then in 2007 that they were an important band, and they still are. You know, they're a festival headline level artist. And And you know, that's it's been, I think, ultimately, despite the you know, the remark that I referred to, I think actually the fact that I worked with architects in those very exciting years has ended up being a more positive calling card for me over time.
Yeah.
And it's helped define that I have, I feel one of my main skill sets is that I can recognize talent early, and architects is kind of good proof of that. It's like a
Proof
good
of concept.
something I can, it's proof of concept, something I can point to and go, architects.